So our next speaker is Dr. Jason King. He is an associate professor, a director of writing, history, and emergent media studies, and director of global studies, as well as the founding faculty member at NYU's Clive Davis Institute of Recorded Music. He is a journalist, author, musician, DJ, scholar, consultant, and producer. He is the author of the Michael Jackson Treasures. He has published numerous academic essays in anthologies and journals, and he is a regular contributor to publications like Pitchfork, NPR, Billboard, BuzzFeed, Slate, and Vice. Professor King was the host and co-producer of NPR's Noteworthy, a series on the creative process of music superstars, as well as the curator of NPR's 24/7 streaming R&B radio channel, and the host of the CNN original podcast soundtracks, The B-Sides. He's been a yeah, that's right, yeah. He's been a legal expert witness for artists like Jay-Z, Kanye West, Drake, Katy Perry, Madonna, and Lady Gaga. Wows, right? He is an inaugural member of the Hip Hop Council at the Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts, and he serves on several prominent advisory and editorial boards. He is the band leader, songwriter, and producer behind international supergroup Company Freak. Today, Professor King will be giving us a lecture entitled A Brief History of Black Musicians, Feeling the Future, from Thelonious Monk and Prince to Missy Elliott and Frank Ocean. Please join me in welcoming Dr. King to the stage.
Hello, everyone. I am so glad to see you and to be here with all of you. Thank you for that introduction, which makes me blush, if you can see it. But I'm happy to be introduced that way. I want to thank Salamisha for inviting me here and for putting all of this together. Jack Chen, where's Jack? I don't know where Jack is, but wherever Jack, there he is. Thank you, Jack. Thank you to Jessica, the entire staff. What a great gift to be on a program with such amazing fellow lecturers, Yatasha, Ruha. I'm amazed, and just feel very honored to be part of the MTW lecture series and to be here at the Clement Price Institute at Rutgers. It's exceptional. So the title of this talk today is A Brief History of Black Musicians Feeling the Future, and then there's that subtitle. And I was gonna take you on a tour of Black musicians in futurity, everyone from Billie Holiday to John Coltrane to Nina Simone to Monk to Nina Cherry to Missy Elliott to Prince to Lizzo, and then I was like, not enough time. So I'm just gonna do two musicians. I'm gonna talk about Diana Ross and Prince. Is that okay? Do I have your permission? Okay, good. And if you'll indulge me, I'm gonna just talk a little bit through my forthcoming book. It's been forthcoming for a long time, but it's really coming pretty soon. Called Blue Magic, Spirit and Energy in Black Popular Music. Let me just click here. There we go. All right. Okay. Blue Magic, Spirit and Energy in Black Popular Music is a dissection of the mechanics of energy and spirit in Black popular music. By that, I mean it's a deep investigation into the metaphysical, energetic, and spiritual elements of Black music. So I'm talking about things like soul. How many people know soul? I hope everyone in the room. Funk, flow, vibe, swing, heat, being anointed in gospel music, ashe, right? The Yoruban principle. So I'm doing this by looking closely at the work of artists like disco belter Lolita Holloway, 90s R&B chanteuse Toni Braxton, who got referenced this morning, hip-hop producer Timbaland, Jay-Z, Roberta Flack. I have an entire chapter on vibration in the work of Roberta Flack. Phenomena like soul and vibe may be non-representational. They might be metaphysical. They're abstract, they're elusive, but they've always been essential and core and to the power of black music. Whether we're talking about the blues or gospel or jazz or disco, hip-hop, house, go-go, dancehall, Afrobeat, hip life, kwaito, dubstep, crunk, chopped and screwed, trap, tropical house, you name it. Energy and spirit are the through line. We go to a soul music concert because we expect it to be soulful. That's the most obvious statement I could make. But if you didn't experience soul at a soul music concert, you would think something is wrong or something's missing. So soul is central, but how do we define soul? How do we talk about it? How do we characterize it? We expect to experience the transmission of soulful energy, an experience that James Baldwin once called the electrical current of theater, that alchemical process of flesh and blood corroborating flesh and blood, performers and audiences in a holistic feedback loop of intense feeling. I'm interested in black music's ability to produce good feeling, good vibes. How many people have had good vibes listening to black music? Okay, all right. All of this, a fancy way for saying, that good convivial feeling you get when Frankie Beverly and Maze's Before I Let You Go comes blasting out of a car speaker. If you can capture what happens when a song like that comes on, that feeling that you get, that's what I'm trying to capture. Black music's vibrational ability to aggregate and bring people together on one soulful accord is what I call getting togetherness. And that term, getting togetherness, I'm actually borrowing from singer-songwriter Les McCann, who wrote Compared to What for Roberta Flack. He talks about that in his liner notes to Roberta Flack's 1969 debut album, First Take. He goes to one of her concerts and he says, there was so much getting togetherness in the room. I feel getting togetherness in this room. It's abstract, it's non-representational. We can't bottle it, or maybe we can, maybe there's a technology we can, but it's there, I feel it. So I want to be able to write about it and to talk about it and for us to all be able to theorize and think about it. In its bent for getting togetherness, black music offers us a blueprint for the future that suggests how we might achieve wholeness in the social order, not simply through lyrics or themes, but through aesthetics themselves. Aesthetics that prioritize collaboration, collective configurations. Think about the complex structure of Wu-Tang. That's specific to black music, I think. Ensembles, whether you're talking about Miles or Coltrane or Ornette Coleman's or the boy band Brockhampton today. These are the ways in which black music suggests a blueprint for coming together and wholeness. Black music's getting togetherness is related to scientific thought on magnetism, synchronicity, and entanglement. In radiational physics, resonance is the word used to describe therapeutic holistic rapport, what's often referred to as a kind of mutual sensing. Black music energetically creates opportunities for improvisational alliances, solidarities and accords, and various forms of kinships and solidarities that are cultivated in the music, sometimes long before they actually manifest in social reality. So the music points a way to how we might come together through these collective configurations and ensembles and improvisational models that exists even if you have legal segregation, right? You might have other kinds of forms of integration in the music. In his book, In the Break, scholar Fred Moten reminds us that black music creates ensembles and improvised social configurations that confirm Marxist and Marxian utopia. And in so doing, they offer us a blueprint of resistance and respite from atomization and fragmentation, abjection, social exclusion, marginalization, and various forms of social and political disenfranchisement. Here, and I mean specifically in this room right now, it especially makes sense to reference the great Newark writer, Amiri Baraka. In his book, Black Music, he writes, quote, "If you play James Brown, say, money won't change you, but time will take you out. If you play James Brown in a bank, the total environment has changed." Not only the sardonic comment of the lyrics, but the total emotional placement of the rhythm, instrumentation, and sound, and energy is released in the bank, a summoning of images that take the bank and everybody in it on a trip. That is, they visit another place, a place where black people live. But dig, not only is it a place where black people live, it is a place in the spiritual precincts of its emotional telling where black people move in almost absolute strength and openness, unquote. Absolute strength and openness. For Amiri Baraka, James Brown's funky grooves release an energy. They open up a portal that beams us up, Star Trek style, through time and space travel to a speculative other place where black people move in absolute strength and openness. And I think that notion of absolute strength and openness connects to James Baldwin's idea that black people, we're defined by a kind of ironic tenacity. That's the words he would use. That we've learned to wield a kind of fierce and stylized freedom and power that we have yet to fully possess or realize in our unfree social and political realities. But it's there in the music. When the music hits, it beams you to that place where we have that kind of power and freedom. And that's part of the power of black music. So energy, vibrational energy and spirit and vitality may constitute the core of black music's profound power, but they can't necessarily be measured or accounted for by way of scientific proof. So I call these things not there-ness, right? The fact that so much of what black music's constitutive power exists in an abstract space, I think of that as black music's not there. It's there, but it's not there. So since we don't have a physical language to effectively and consistently account for those non-representational aspects of black popular music, we tend to sweep them under the rug. This is an accounting problem. How do you effectively account for not there-ness in black music? Or, more to the point, how can you not account for abstraction and metaphysics in black popular music? Can you write about Patti LaBelle without talking not just about her musicality, which is profound, but also about her profound command of energy and spirit? Blue Magic proposes that the problem of reading what's not there has already been addressed in the aesthetics of commercialized black popular music styles by way of those energetic, non-representational, not there, elusive phenomena like swing, soul, funk, flow, vibe, ashe, et cetera, focusing on energy and spirit brings black music into an urgent and overdue conversation with science and physics. Black music's centralizing of things that we can't see or touch, and its summoning of energy and opening up of portals emerges as a kind of aesthetic meta-commentary on existence itself, asking some of the same questions that quantum physicists like Brian Greene, who's written Hidden Dimensions, for instance, some of the same questions they've been asking for years and years about hidden dimensions and multiverses and other worlds. It also brings black music into a conversation with bodywork practices, dance studies, movement practice, alternative therapy, as well as Eastern, African, Caribbean, South and Central American cosmologies, things like yoga and prana energy, feng shui, vastu, and many other systems that deal with the manipulation and flow of energy. We should be having these conversations more often. These tend to be subjects that have long been marginalized in academic scholarship, and especially in cultural studies, because of scholars' deep-seated failure to take seriously vitalism, superstition, a whole host of other alternative spiritual practices. So my book is really about how through that mystical, elusive release of energy that Amiri Baraka discusses, black music emerges as a knowledge system. It's a way of knowing. Black music is a way of knowing. And that way of knowing privileges immateriality, abstraction, not there-ness. Funk is a way of knowing. It's an epistemology. Soul is an epistemology. Vibe is an epistemology. These are complex ways of understanding and being and moving through the world with that strength and openness that Baraka talked about. The late scholar Randy Martin once called this practice of reading beyond, right, where you're reading soul or funk or things that are not there, he called it overreading. And essentially that's a kind of reading past the external form of a performance to address its life in sensory surplus. I think we can go a step further, though, and connect overreading to clairvoyance, which we could describe as the sensory practice of seeing beyond into the future. And I think we could also talk about clairaudience, which is hearing into the future. That's a word we should use way more often, by the way, clairaudience. The best musicians, Thelonious Monk, Nina Simone, Larry Levan, Timbaland, Melba Liston, Missy Elliott, we could name thousands right now. They can not only hear beyond, hear into the future, they can hear notes that are not yet there. And I think that's a metaphor for how art proffers to us the blueprint for optimistic futures that we can't yet imagine, what scholar Jose Munoz called the not yet here of futurity. The best Black musicians traffic in energetic feeling, emotion, and sentiment. And in that way, they're not just clairvoyant or clairaudient, they're clairsentient. Please add this word to your vocabulary. Clairsentience is the sensory, mystical practice of feeling beyond sentience, feeling beyond, feeling the future. Black musicians feel the future. So I want to rethink Black music as a clairsentient knowledge system, as a paranormal, paraperformative way of knowing the not yet here that is also the not there. That clairsentient practice of feeling into the future, reading what's not there, requires faith. And what is faith but belief in the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen? To appreciate the surplus, not there elements of Black music, aura, vibe, soul, energy, is to appreciate the evidence of things not seen, which is a kind of optimism. Fela Kuti, the great Nigerian Afrobeat leader, once prophesied that music is the weapon of the future. Black music is a weapon of the future because it's instantiation in faith, in elements like soul that can't be seen, but only felt or intuited. Black music is where feeling, abstraction, and immateriality emerge as the highest form of knowledge and experience. As Bob Marley once said, "He who feels it knows it." Okay. I've always wanted to have that slide up here in a big room. Okay, I just think it's fantastic. All right, so I start Blue Magic, the book, with a preamble on the mechanics and the social implications of how Diana Ross energetically works a crowd. To me, there should be tomes on this, but there aren't. It seems wild to state, but there's very, very little academic scholarship on Diana Ross. We were talking about this earlier at lunch. We could probably only name one or two essays, if that, ever written on Diana Ross as a solo artist. And that's shocking, particularly because she's one of the most successful and impactful Black artists of the entire 20th century, and even to the 21st century. I believe that the deeper reasons for her erasure and neglect from scholarship is because she's a Black woman in pop music, let's just say it. Black women in pop music are rarely taken seriously. You have multi-volume tomes on the Beatles and Bob Dylan, but none on Dinah Washington or Mavis Staples or Phyllis Hyman or Janet Jackson or Mariah Carey or Whitney Houston, on and on and on. But I also think it's because a chief source of Diana Ross's power as a musician is her ability to traffic in energy. The argument I want to make is that if you rethink Diana Ross as an artist whose chief power is to cultivate, manage, and format auratic energy, so aura, auratic energy, vibrational energy in a room, for instance, or a concert space. If you think of her as a supremely effective curator of what Baldwin called that shared electrical current between performer and audience, then you can reposition Diana Ross as an avant-garde, ahead of her time innovator in tactility, touch. Diana Ross's work prefigured and shaped our contemporary interest in haptic technologies around touch, where we reach out and touch and tap and swipe on our smartphones and tablet devices in order to pursue closeness and intimacy with those we know or want to know, depending on what app you're using. All right, so let me start here. In the summer of 1983, Diana Ross staged a free concert for more than 150,000 New Yorkers in Central Park's Great Lawn. On that fateful night, however, a massive thunderstorm tore through the city. Andy Warhol, of all people, happened to be in the audience. And in his posthumously released diaries, he reminisces about the event with no shortage of hyperbole. So he says, "I could never really describe the Diana Ross concert in Central Park. The sky darkened, and the rain came, and it was the most incredible thing I've ever seen. Just the event of the century. Her hair blowing and soaking wet. And if only they'd had a covering on the place where she was, she could have kept on singing, and the kids would have stayed, and she would have had her concert for TV. But they stopped it in the middle of the storm, and they're going to do it again tomorrow. She was crying, and concert producer Barry Diller was trying to get her to stop, but she said that she'd waited for 20 years to do this. The lightning made it dangerous, I guess. But it was like a dream, like a hallucination, watching this spectacle. It was like the greatest scene from a movie ever. When they do her life story in the movies, you can just see this huge event, and then later she's crying and saying, "Why did this happen to me?" And then drinking and slitting her wrists. But oh, the thunder and lightning looked so great, so beautiful. End quote. So perfect weather does ensue the following night, and Diana Ross restages her concert without a hitch. But Warhol considers that follow-up concert a bummer. He says, it was the day of the second Diana Ross concert because they decided to redo it, and the concert was anticlimactic because it was just regular. So missing for Andy Warhol were all the unexpected elements that made the opening night so dreamlike, cinematic, and beautiful. Swirling wind mischievously dusting up against Diana Ross's orange bodysuit and diaphanous cape-like scarf, and rain falling from the darkened sky, crackling with thunder and vivid bolts of electrical discharge. To me, she reminds me of Storm from the X-Men, like stretching around. I'm like, all right. So in her 1994 autobiography, Diana Ross claims that just minutes prior to the start of that concert, quote, "The energy in Central Park was electrified, sensual, alive with the heartbeats of people. I could feel their beauty and excitement, all 400,000 of them." I think it was less, but that's what she said. Yeah. She recalls feeling connected with the crowd that's gathered to see her. She's enlivened by their collective, energetic presence. At her best, and when the weather happens to be on her side, Diana Ross works it in concerts. How many people have actually seen Diana Ross in a concert? Okay. Or, as hip-hop heads say, she knows how to move the crowd. And she does so by generously drawing on her personal energy, and in this case, cosmic energy, to transcendently lift the spirits of audiences, all in the service of therapeutic, convivial, good feeling. Diana Ross's overflowing gift of expended personal energy is itself a kind of political labor. She deploys vitalistic energy, ashe, life force, chi, you choose the name for it, whatever you will. She deploys that energy to cultivate feelingful connection with her audience. For Diana Ross, and for so many other artists who traffic in soulful, sentimental, good feeling and vibrational contact, their concerts and recordings are opportunities for performers and audiences to experience long-distance feelings for each other, affective, intimate, convivial, quasi-kinship bonds that cut across time and space. The reason we go to concerts is to overcome our sense of long-distance feelings for each other. It's like we want to reach out to each other, but we're bounded by who we are as people, and going to concerts helps us overcome that to some degree, or that's the idea. So Black music cuts across the stark reality of our bounded separate selves to remind us of our inherent interconnectedness. It is no coincidence that a handful of Diana Ross's best-loved songs, her 1971 rethink of the Four Tops' Reach Out, I'll Be There, her 1973 Mahogany Treacle Fest, Touch Me in the Morning, and I say Treacle Fest with great love, 1984's Touch by Touch. These songs are all thematically preoccupied with touch and with interpersonal contact and communion. What if we could recast Diana Ross as a specialist in the power of touch? Her best work promotes soulful, therapeutic healing in service of a democratic solidarity and rapport with her audience. Diana Ross's feel-good anthem, Reach Out and Touch Somebody's Hand, released in 1970 and written by and produced by Valerie Simpson and Nick Ashford, became Diana Ross's inaugural solo single after she left the Supremes. Featuring a gorgeous string arrangement by Paul Reiser, the epic ballad rides on post-Altamont therapeutic bromides and an inspirational universalist quasi-gospel message, reach out and touch somebody's hand, make this world a better place if you can. Not dissimilar to Dionne Warwick, Burt Bacharach, and Hal David's What the World Needs Now is Love, which was released a year earlier. Though Reach Out and Touch Somebody's Hand only went to number 20 on the pop charts, Diana Ross has long made the song a permanent staple of her concerts. If you've seen her perform it live, she often encourages her audience members to sing along and lock hands with whoever is sitting next to them. I will not ask you to do that right now. Don't worry. Diana Ross's insistence on touch in these situations is not just theoretical, not just thematic, it's physical. It's experiential. No Diana Ross live concert performance of Reach Out and Touch Somebody's Hand is going to be successful unless she delivers on the song's intrinsic promise to generate interpersonal communion. The song is intended to therapeutically shift the energy in a concert space and bring bounded souls sitting in separate seats or standing in isolation from each other into mutualistic accord. It is a blueprint for how we can overcome our long-distance feelings for each other and move into a choreography of getting togetherness. Diana Ross's career-spanning predilection for therapeutic tactility brings her performances in direct conversation with bodywork practices like music therapy, because music therapy is very much concerned with issues of touch and tactility, as well as a range of alternative healing practices that are also about the healing power of touch. Diana Ross's tactility practice deserves to be in conversation with a robust body of scholarship on tactility and sensuality by philosophers as wide-ranging as Walter Benjamin, Mick Taussig, and Paul Stoller. But we also shouldn't miss the future-oriented dimension of Diana Ross's work, even though she is rarely considered an artist who has or had any relationship to the politics of Black futurity. Contemporary tech companies like Google and Apple currently encourage customers to reach out and haptically touch their screens or to input keypad demands in order to metaphorically reach out and touch friends, families, and loved ones, or prospective dates or sexual partners, again, depending on what app you're using. You touch the oleophobic screen, the makers of the iPhone suggest, and in no time, you too can meet the woman or man of your dreams or sustain your emotional closeness with your grandmother. We sort of take that for granted, right? That we're reaching out all the time through our technology. On one hand, contemporary haptic technologies alienate us from collective forms of mass aggregation. Woodstock, for instance, could never have happened over a smartphone, right? But even as these technologies alienate us from one another, they also deliberately offer us convenient solutions for overcoming those long-distance feelings. So they give us the antidote for the poison of social fragmentation and atomization that they themselves administer. AT&T helped pioneer that very same conflation between haptics and social communion. And they did so by way of their 1970 Reach Out and Touch Someone campaign. It was then Bell Telephone that was heard in the 70s and also in 1980s television and print ads. AT&T then revived that popular and memorable slogan in 2003 for its Reach Out campaign. That slogan, rooted in the idea of haptic engagement as soulful connection, has endured for decades, and it has arguably inspired nearly every other telecommunications and social media-focused tech company, too. Media theorist Marshall McLuhan, a pioneer in teasing out the relationship between tactility and technology, usually gets exclusive credit for devising the Reach Out and Touch Someone slogan. But I've actually uncovered evidence that our contemporary obsession with haptics finds its roots in a much more unlikely place, in the soulful 1970s Black popular music of Diana Ross, Ashford and Simpson, who popularized that concept of reaching out in touch in 1970, a full year before McLuhan did, or before AT&T did the same. So even though the jingle, AT&T's jingle, is not exactly the same as reach out and touch somebody's hand, there's actually graphs that show the use of the phrase reach out and touch, and there are no mainstream uses of that phrase prior to Diana Ross and Ashford and Simpson's use of it. In the book Digital Dharma, A User's Guide to Expanding Consciousness in the Infosphere, a book I know you've all read just recently, but you should, writer Stephen Vedro traces a non-conventional history of the relationship between telephony and the second chakra, the corporeal energy center that radiates the primordial drive for union embedded in our very protons and electrons. This is the connection chakra. Delving into the work of Marshall McLuhan, Vedro deftly rewrites the history of telephone use as an extension of the eternal human longing for connectedness. Phones, he argues, are no more than the techno-material means by which human beings stay connected with each other at the second chakra level. Vedro recounts how women were hired to replace early male switchboard operators, and in so doing, the sound of the female voice became central to the early consumer telephony experience, linking back to what Ruha was saying about Alexa and these voices today. Vedro's insightful writing suggests another way to think about the ongoing centrality of Black female soul and R&B vocalizers like Phoebe Snow and Roberta Flack, who were hired to help brand tech companies like AT&T by lending their voices to the jingles that have since shaped our understanding of the purpose of haptic technologies. Rather than focus only on the techno-dystopian idea that our contemporary technologies are disaggregating us, tearing us apart, and making us lonely through filter bubbles. What if spirit and energy, illuminated in the feelingful, touch-focused black music of artists like Diana Ross, actually drives us to develop these technologies like smartphones, that in turn allow us to become more powerfully interconnected across time and space and overcome our long-distance feelings? So what if we ultimately want iPhones or create iPhones so that they can do what Shaka Khan does in her concerts, right? Given her long preoccupation with the connection between touch and soulful communion, we should move beyond the idea that Diana Ross is simply just a luminary pop figure who's been categorically ignored by serious scholars in the academic establishment. Instead, she plays a prefigurative and constitutive role in mainstreaming contemporary ideas about the power and value of touch in our late capitalist era of socially focused telecommunications technologies. Diana Ross is always already part of the black future, but only if we're able to consider the mechanics of her not there, energy-centric artistry. Make sense? Awesome, okay. So as the Diana Ross example demonstrates, I believe we do need to focus more on what I would describe as the black sentimental avant-garde. And that's a term actually by way of Fred Moten, the scholar. We need to pay more attention to the complex politics of love, intimacy, romance, sensuality, sex, those long-distance feelings in black popular culture, and the way that all of these affective issues exist not outside of avant-garde musings about futurity, but inside of them. The challenge in writing about black music's non-representational life and energetic surplus is that so much of the oxygen in the room has been co-opted by post-humanist scholarship and writing and concerns, writers like Kodwo Eshun and others, who allow us to really focus on very, very important aspects of contemporary technology as it relates to black cultural politics. They're focused on issues of cyborg identity and so on. But I feel like that's also meant that there's decidedly less attention paid to squarely humanist 20th century artists, people like Diana Ross, or Toni Braxton, or the OJs, or Etta James, or Michelle Montano, or Hugh Masekela, or Anita Baker, Minnie Riperton. There's no books on any of these people. There's no scholarship on any of these people in the academy, right? So one of the ways I think that we have to overcome those gaps in our scholarship is to really focus on black music, not only when it's in an explicit relationship to emergent technology or to science fiction, but also when it's relating to what you might call the sentimental avant-garde, right? So I suggest we pursue the future by digging the past, going back to look at these blind-spotted figures hiding in plain sight, figures whose instantiation and energy and vibe is just as much transformed by technology as it has transformed those technologies themselves. We need to reimagine what black futurity looks like so that we are also producing for ourselves a sentimental future, a sensual future, an emotionally intelligent future, a spiritually rich future, an empathetic future, one where black women, LGBT and trans folks, and many others who have traditionally not been invited to the party play a profound and central role. A black future where figures like, Abbey Lincoln, the great jazz icon, a figure who I think embodies what writer and theorist Paul Kurtz called planetary humanism in her work, where someone like Abbey Lincoln becomes legible. A future where academia takes seriously British-Nigerian singer-songwriter Sade. There should be conferences and festivals and anthologies. There should be the Sade Reader. As crazy as that sounds, it shouldn't sound crazy, right? And that would help us investigate the profound multi-decade power of her sensual, vibey work. A future where Marian Anderson and Dinah Washington, Gladys Knight, Earth, Wind & Fire, Al Green, Curtis Mayfield, and others, Luther Vandross, don't have to wait decades to be recognized or appreciated for the work that they've been doing, work that has been pointing the way forward all the time. Okay, so in that spirit, I want to close this part of the lecture with some thoughts on one aspect of the sentimental avant-garde, which I would describe as the black erotic avant-garde. And who else to call on to talk about this but Prince? Yay. All right. Let's applaud for Prince. Come on, let's do it. So in July 1984, singer-songwriter, producer Prince, starring in his box office bonanza Purple Rain at the height of his transmedia crossover success, released Erotic City as the B-side of the hit single Let's Go Crazy. The full title, as you see up there from the 45, is Erotic City, Make Love Not War, right? Come Alive, with no punctuation. Prince was way ahead of the millennials, no punctuation on smartphones. An instant electro-funk classic, Erotic City is creepily android-like and flagrantly sexual. It features Sheila E. on co-lead vocals, and it's one of Prince's most danceable and indispensable outliers. Erotic City is what it might sound like if James Brown did a one-off collaboration with George Clinton, Bell Laboratories, a Speak and Spell Machine, and the Johnson Crew. Prince, the record producer, is Apollonian, all puns intended, in his studio choices. Exquisitely minimalist and full of restraint, there's so much spaciousness to Erotic City's nervous, marauding groove. In fact, Erotic City achieves a complex simplicity that's rare in 80s funk. There's no horn section, few suspended keyboards, no live battery of background singers. Prince's hypnotic bass, no more than 3 simple repeating notes, never lands on the tonic, giving the track a slightly off-kilter, unresolved tension. Prince's eccentric Lindrum programming features syncopated polyrhythms and his signature gated reverb and echo, equal parts Kraftwerk and Green Velvet. Erotic City joins Vanity Six's Nasty Girl, also written and produced by Prince, as a signature groove that would later set the stage for the whimsical, computerized funk of producers like the Neptunes, Timbaland, and Missy Elliott in and beyond the late 1980s. Erotic City is permanently ahead of its time. Like the best of black music, its predilection for warped space and time means that the track is on time, in time, out of time, and past time at the same time. Erotic City's lyrics, by the way, this is the only time you'll probably hear somebody lecture about Erotic City in the Academy, but that's why I'm doing it. Erotic City's lyrics match the track's downcast mood, especially when horny-toed Prince has Sheila E. offer up alternate options if they fail to get laid. If we cannot make babies, maybe we can spend some time, he says. With its electro-funky rhythms and otherworldly pitch vocals, Erotic City is the sound of dirty-minded black cyborgs figuring out how to jack each other off. Prince isn't performing the song alone. Sheila E. acts as the track's sexual cut to riff off of Fred Moten, himself riffing off of Nate Mackey. She cuts and augments his song, transforming what would otherwise be a solo Prince jack-off session into a strange relationship. Erotic City presents us with not just one Prince voice, there's multiple Prince voices in harmonizing high and low pitches. There are so many timbres of Prince in Erotic City that the singing turns queer, weird, strange, alien, futuristic. Dean Van Nuyen once noted that Prince, quote, fluttered between the margins of genders and genres as a cyborg chanteur. Erotic City forces us to rehear that famous line from I Would Die For You from 1984, I'm not a woman, I'm not a man, I'm something that you will never understand. If there's no central voice in Erotic City, Prince is mixing his fractured, multiplicitous lead with Sheila's, whose voice is actually pitch consistent. That's because Prince is electing to perform a version of black masculinity that's shifting, changing, and unstable. Prince's production choices around his voice echo the work of Afrofuturist science fiction writer Samuel Delany, who wrote a lot about fractured identities and the search for erotic cities in books like Triton, Stars in My Pocket, and even his nonfiction books like Times Square Red, Times Square Blue, which is about a history of New York and Times Square as an erotic city. Erotic City, like many of Prince's orphan B-sides, is a homeless, placeless track. Never originally included as part of an official album, Erotic City doesn't seem to belong anywhere. Even the song's offbeat production honors its placelessness. It was recorded in Los Angeles, but it sounds like a confluence of references that include Prince's hometown, Minneapolis, Detroit, because of its referencing of Parliament's Chocolate City from 1975, and Prince actually wrote Erotic City on the night he inducted, or the night he went to go see P-Funk perform, and then he later inducted them into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. It's also referencing Oakland by way of Sly and the Family Stone, Love City. And it's also referencing Copenhagen because the track is a kind of mopping of the duo Laid Back from Denmark, who made the strange anti-heroin, pro-cocaine polemic White Horse. So if you know White Horse, it sounds the same as Erotic City. So, all right, so Erotic City dances all over the map, but that dancing is more than just figurative or metaphoric. Erotic City's twitchy rhythm track, how many people did a little twitching? Okay. It's designed to compel you to come alive. Remember the subtitle is Come Alive? It's designed to make you move your body, to turn you into a sexy dancer, a human compass in search of an answer to Norman Whitfield's eternal question, which way is up? And in black music, you get down to get up. Given its impressionistic lyrics and mobilizing music, Erotic City is all about geography, location, direction, and displacement. From the title alone, Erotic City references a place that is no place, because it's an imaginary future utopia that does not exist, but could exist if we could figure out a way, as the lyric suggests, to make it come alive. I've listened to Erotic City for decades, and I always ask, where is it? How do we get there? How many miles? Can I GPS it? Google map it? How do you get to Erotic City? So in this song, Prince is picking up on that late 60s pre-Altamont Summer of Love ethos, make love not war, by giving it that subtitle, as well as Sly and the Family Stone's bohemian, Kojic-infused love vibe, and he fuses that to his own Protestant Christian theology by way of his Seventh-day Adventism. His goal is to render the possibility of a redemptive erotic city, a hedonistic destination where you F until the dawn, that biblical rapturous end times inflection moment that Prince returns to again and again in his lyrics. So I do think his work in a lot of ways complements William Gibson, Octavia Butler, Samuel Delany. Prince was imagining virtual worlds long before a lot of other musicians were doing so, and those worlds featured fictional erotic cities with purple people living purple lives and little red Corvettes driving down highways and byways and triways. In its unmappable precincts, Erotic City conjures an impossible place that we haven't yet reached, but that the funkiest of us want to move and dance toward, a place that may not currently exist, but feels worth getting to in the future. What if we were to think of Erotic City as more than just a dance track, but as an offbeat funk cartography? It's a map. The song gives us directions on how to get to the other side, get to the B-side, that utopic space or place of alterity, of otherness that doesn't yet exist, that space of absolute strength and openness that Baraka talked about, what Jose Munoz again envisioned as the queer not yet here. What if we all took Prince's exhortation to let's go crazy, so let's actually go crazy, and rehear Erotic City as a taboo-breaking electro-funk contemplation of the politics of distance, geography, time, and urbanity, a vision of funk that's out from the outside, beyond place, committed to outsiderness, because it's black and brown and white and American and European and Hollywood and Laurel Canyon and Bay Area and Minneapolis and New Jersey and Detroit and Danish and Rick James-esque and George Clinton-esque and who knows what else. And I'm coming to the end here. Crafted during the age-shocked Reagan 80s, that same era that has recently been mined and excavated in two of the best works of popular culture this millennium, Jordan Peele's Us and HBO's The Watchmen. Erotic City maps out those underground, subterranean, lost, not yet here future networks of visceral feeling, hot touching, aching horniness, erotic sex, that push back against the grimness of late capitalist, hyper-techno, sterility, pessimism, cynicism, and anerotic dread. Erotic City's sensual, feelingful rhythms are instead designed to create loose joints, to protest against ossification, joint hardening, stiffness, coma, anti-sentience. Ultimately, Erotic City, in making us move, reminds us that the surplus, not there, energetics of black music are some of our best weapons of the future. Black music is more than a music or sound. It's a destination. It's a place we can summon. It's an erotic city we want to get to through time and space travel. It's a musical, sonic location destination where erotic citizens, hell-bent on dancing in soulful solidarity, converge, get together, move their bodies in sensual togetherness as a way to achieve therapeutic protest. Black music has already mapped out the blueprint of the future for us. We are the ones who now need to make it come alive. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thanks. Thank you.